Clemson University is well known for its outstanding academics as well as their championship football team. They are ranked 66th in national universities and 16th in best undergraduate teaching for 2019. The university was founded in 1889, and the land that it is built on was once owned by John C. Calhoun, who later gave the land to his daughter, Anne Marie Calhoun Clemson, and her husband, Thomas Green Clemson. Clemson University is filled with a rich history and great achievements, but there is also a different, lesser-known side to the university. Even though the past is easier to overlook and oftentimes less relevant to modern day, it is important that we acknowledge the past. Due to the fact that many students don't know about the darker side of Clemson's past involving the use of slave labor, Clemson University should be required to present students with the information in a more accessible and widespread manner. To help answer this question, we decided to go out and ask students if they know anything about how this university was created.
What do you know about the land that Clemson was built on?
I'm sorry, what's the
Or just anything that comes to mind.
like a farm? Is that like what?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
There's no wrong answers.
Okay.
I know that it was a plantation.
Nothing at all.
I know that it was a plantation originally, and I know that Clemson doesn't talk a lot about that, and they really should.
Honestly, I don't know anything about it. I assume Clemson bought it off of somebody. Either that or they took it from someone. But in all honesty, I'm unaware.
I think it was like built on a plantation, maybe something like that.
The full history of Clemson University is not widely known across campus. Most students are not aware of the events that took place on this very campus before it was Clemson University. For example, the mansion on Fort Hill, a focal point on this part of campus, was once owned by John C. Calhoun. When he lived in the mansion he owned from 1825 to 1850, he had around 70 to 80 slaves working the plantation of over 1,000 acres of land. The property was sold to Andrew Pickens, who owned the property until 1871, but by the end of the Civil War, there were 129 slaves on the plantation. The property was eventually passed down to Thomas Green Clemson, who was married to Anna Maria Calhoun Clemson, John C. Calhoun's daughter. While Thomas G. Clemson owned the property, many of the former slaves were employed as wage hands. When he died, Clemson's will gave most of his property to the state for the establishment of an agricultural college. Once turned over to the state, his will helped fund the creation of the institution that is known as Clemson University today. Clemson wanted to preserve the Fort Hill home and have it serve as a museum. However, this approach did not educate the students on the practices that happened in the past and on that very land.
I know that Clemson is like the university, and then Calhoun, I think he might have like funded or like started like the university. Not really positive, but.
Was it Calhoun a general?
There's no right answers. Anything
I
comes to
think
mind.
he was a general.
Not much.
I know that their family tree is very intertwined. I know this was Anna Calhoun's land, but she did marry, I think it was Thomas Calhoun.
Well, Clemson and Calhoun are the nearby towns, right? So that's how I would assume they would get their names.
I know Clemson University and then Calhoun Honors College, so like something like that.
After these interviews, it became evident that these parts of Clemson's history are relatively unknown on campus. It is for these reasons that the university's histories should be presented to the students in a more accessible fashion.
One type of unethical labor utilized by Clemson University is known as convict labor. Convict labor was at its high at Clemson College between 1890 and 1899, where approximately 600 laborers ages 12 to 67 were instituted to create the first buildings and signed into contracts where they became third-generation slaves. However, many of the stories of convict laborers, such as the young Wade Foster, who was forced into months of convict labor at 12 years old for petty theft, still remain untold to the majority of campus. They were legally known as slaves of the state and crafted millions of bricks and buildings that Clemson uses today. They built Tillman and Hardin Hall by hand and the home that held the first chemistry professor, the Trustee House. They obviously played a major role in creating the foundation of Clemson University, and therefore they should be known by the student body. However, through a series of short interviews, we found that many understand what convict labor is, but they do not know its extensive use of Clemson, nor its similarities to slavery.
Alright, so, do you know what convict labor is? Alright, so convict labor, it's basically a form of labor where the state would convict African Americans or just any person that committed a crime and put them into a form of labor where they didn't have any say basically. It could be for anything that was basically a small thievery. Alright, so do you know what convict labor is?
Yes.
Alright, could you give us a brief explanation of what it is?
Prison people doing work.
Convict labor. I get convict. I mean, sounds like reminds me of like illegal, so it sounds like slavery, but.
I mean, assuming from the name, it sounds like something like maybe using criminals.
Alright, did you know that convict labor was used at Clemson University?
Seriously?
Our question is, why do you think it stopped, and when do you think it stopped?
Because of the Civil Rights Act.
Probably like the 60s, maybe?
1860.
Alright, and why do you think it stopped?
No idea.
With the civil rights movement, that would be my assumption.
What?
When you-
Not soon enough, I don't think. I'm doing the same research project, but I don't know.
So, why do you think it stopped?
Why?
Yeah, convict labor.
I don't know. I know slavery stopped because of the Civil War and the Abraham Lincoln, but I don't know. Is it not effective or the state?
As of recent, on April 11, 2016, Clemson created a series of markers that told the history of convict laborers, which was known as the Clemson College Convict Stockpick Marker, among others. This particular marker revealed the sentences of the convicts and some of the buildings they created. However, it fails to mention the poor treatment of the African Americans and similarities to slavery. The university has made a lackluster attempt to present the darker parts of its history, and should be required to present the full history rather than the fractions of its past that lessen the gravity of Clemson's history. The attempt in presenting the full spectrum of its history is important to recognize the work done by convict laborers, just as those with racial backgrounds, notably Benjamin Tillman and others who have their names imprinted on monuments and entire buildings. Tillman Hall is named in memory of Benjamin Tillman, who is one of the founding trustees of the school, who is also known for his white supremacist rhetoric. It is unfair to have the name on the building and have people not be aware of the history associated with the man, just as it's unfair to poorly explain the conditions of the convict laborers on a single marker who deserve to be given more credit and awareness.
What we deduced after conducting the interviews is that Clemson's history of using slave and convict labor in its past life needs to be more accessible to its students. The campus does have plaques and markers at places such as the Fort Hill House, but they do not tell the complete story. They only include the basic facts while leaving out bulk of the information. If Clemson is going to memorialize people who have contributed to the university with racist past, they need to make their complete history known, including any acceptance or endorsement of slavery. Even though it might not be as great of an accomplishment as winning the national championship, it is still vital to inform people who walk these grounds about who has walked here before them.